Our next guest is a very, very interesting person, and this is somebody I became aware of because a lot of you, excuse me, a lot of you told me about him. He has a website called RonPaulFlix.com, and it's been a website that has been pivotal in the advancement of freedom and liberty, especially this election cycle. There are so many people who go to RonPaulFlix and grab information and see what's happening, and it's always good to have one of those centralized locations where you can find clips and say, hey, you know, this is the message that's not being readily distributed through the mainstream media. And his name is Israel Anderson, a very interesting man with an interesting story. So welcome to the show, Israel. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it is great to have you because I love your website. I've been there many times. Matter of fact, you've posted me on your website a few times, I believe. And it's one of those websites that I check regularly. Let's start with that, and we'll get into some other areas of your life because you are fascinating, but people do know you from the Ron Paul Flix. What moved you to create this website?
Well, actually, it was the child of something else I created in the last election cycle for Ron Paul, and that was the Ron Paul Video Podcast. And that was a service that didn't really have a website, except with a link to the special iTunes feed that would then launch your iTunes application and take you through to the podcast where you could subscribe. And we picked then the very best news clips, and we re-encoded them for your iPhone, iPod Touch, and whatnot. And then you could share those around with people. And that was convenient because you always had everything on a mobile device. Sadly, this time when trying to get onto mobile devices, we had several developers working with us over the last year and a half, and unfortunately we just got let down every time. But so out of the Ron Paul Video Podcast came Ron Paul Flix. We knew we needed a website. Facebook is far more predominant this time around than it was last time. Most people were not on Facebook 4 years ago. Now everybody is. So we wanted to do something a little different. And also podcasts have kind of faded away a little as well. Most people today don't subscribe to any podcasts. 4 years ago, podcasts were the rage. So Ron Paul Flix came out of that, and at our peak we were getting, I think it was about 195,000 users per month, unique users per month on Ron Paul Flix. That's dropped off dramatically now, of course, because everybody feels that it's over. Of course, it's far from over. There's so much to do. Everybody needs to be out there running for local, state, and federal offices as much as they possibly can. We need to take over the entire system, not just the White House. So I hope people out there realize this one battle for the presidency might be drawing to a close, and we may have lost it. But the greater war of freedom and pushing back the strength of tyranny in this nation is far from over, and we have a lot to do.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that makes this election cycle so different, because if we look at attempts to restore a liberty-minded candidate in the past through whether playing through the party system or trying to get a third-party candidate in or whatever, there's always been this idea that we need to shoot for the White House every single time. And now I think people are waking up to the fact that no. You know what we really need to do is we need to lay that groundwork where we start having liberty-minded candidates in county office, in school boards, for goodness sakes, in state politics, and we're working that system now. And I think we're seeing a lot of growth in that area.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the most important offices people need to take, and liberty-minded people in every county need to get together, and they need to win the sheriff's office. The sheriff is the most important authoritative person in every county. He has more power than the president does. So we need to get together. We need to find an upright individual who has a clean record, who perhaps has some law enforcement experience, and we need to run him as a sheriff, and we need to win. winning that sheriff's position is so vitally important. But it doesn't matter whether it's sheriff or dog catcher. Dog catcher is also an electable position, as crazy as that sounds. We need to win every single position that is available. Let's catch those dogs for liberty. I mean, people say, well, Israel, because I've mentioned this a few times over the last week, why would I run for a dog catcher? How can a dog catcher extend liberty? Well, if you're a dog catcher, you're in an elected position, so you're invited to the meetings, and people get to know who you are, and you end up networking with all these people and making all these friends that are all involved in your local politics, and that's just a stepping stone. You're not going to stay a dog catcher. You're going to build a network of people, and then you're going to run for a city mayor or something greater than a dog catcher. Let's be honest, dog catcher is not the highest office most people are dreaming of running for, but it's a good stepping stone. It will get you in. And there's also a ton of these positions that are they haven't been run for a long time. Nobody's filled them for a long time. So if you'll probably find that there is no dog catcher in your county if it's a small county. Go run for it and get it. You'll run uncontested. Or you may find that, the sheriff has been there for 20 years and, people really don't think about it. And he's never run contested. So go and contest his office. You may win. Remember what Ron Paul said when he was running for Congress, and Carol Paul warned him, well, you might just win. You might just win. So go and run, and don't say no. And somebody who was like 32 years old on the RonPaulFlix Facebook page said the other day, well, I'm too young to run for office. Oh my! I mean, you're old enough to be a federal state representative at that point.
Yeah.
You're just a couple of years away from being able to be eligible to run for president, for Pete's sake. No, you're not too young. Go run. I've heard of 18 and 19-year-old Ron Paul people running for mayor of their small city and winning. So we can do this. We can actually really do this. This is the way we take over. We push back tyranny in this country is not by winning the White House. We always talk about how the presidency has no power constitutionally. He's more of a figurehead. And, well, then why is it so important we win the presidency then, if we believe that? Let's win all these other local offices and take over.
And, we've had a lot of local candidates on this show because I agree with you. I mean, that's where the real fight is. And if we are fighting tyranny from Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. has created this environment where they cocoon themselves. They're unapproachable. However, the guy who's running your local county board lives down the street. So they're more apt to vote in line for what's better for the people because they know they have to face you in the grocery store. So this push to really elect local officials in the county, city, and state governments is vital. And as we've talked to a lot of them, Israel, a lot of them have said, you know what, it's a lot easier than I thought because I don't have opposition. There's nobody else who's running.
And you don't need a lot of money. Some people spend a couple of $1,000s on some flyers they hand out outside a shopping center, and wow, they win. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's fantastic. I've got a lot of friends here locally. I've been very involved in politics here locally, and one of our Ron Paul people who became a major part of the GOP here in Colorado is now running for state rep in her district.
Awesome. Israel, we're up against a break. Let's continue that conversation right after this. Don't go anywhere. Leaves are falling all around. All right, we're talking with Israel Anderson, the founder of RonPaulFlix.com. A great site. If you haven't checked it out yet, definitely go there. So, Israel, we talked about the importance of having people run for state and county and local offices. We've kind of hinted at the fact that, the future is coming one way or the other for Ron Paul. From a political standpoint, where do you see this Ron Paul movement going in August, September, October, and November?
Oh, gosh. That must be a $6 million question.
Yeah, I did.
It's like I did a show a few days ago. You can find it on RonPaulFlix, where I explained that even though Ron Paul's conceded we need to continue tackling this. A few weeks ago, I did a show on Warren G. Harding, who went to the National Convention, the Republican National Convention, with 28 delegates, and he ended up winning. Now, can we do that? Look, it's very unlikely. Does the possibility exist? Yeah, it does. And that's why I have said to people, even though it looks bleak, and even though the chances of us winning are just, at this point, remote, to say the least, should we continue to fight? Should we still go to Tampa? Should we still do whatever we can to try and win the nomination, even though it looks impossible? Absolutely. We should. Of course we should. We need to do that. I don't think that'll bear fruit, but as long as there is at least some possibility, then we should do that. So
I think sometimes
that's all.
Well, and I think sometimes the fruit that it bears isn't necessarily the fruit we expect. I mean, the fruit that it bears could be inspiring 50 other people to run for office, or it could be,
Sure.
other people seeing other people collectively gather and say, we're not going to take it anymore. But you mentioned that Ron Paul has conceded. There's a lot of back and forth opinion on this, because obviously after Rand, and I don't really want to talk about Rand, but Rand came out and endorsed Mitt Romney. A lot of people said, well, Ron Paul is officially conceded. He hasn't officially suspended his campaign, has he?
No, he's not suspended his campaign, but he has conceded the fact that he does not have the delegates and will not have the delegates to compete in Tampa. And that's as concessionary as you can get. So,
but is that necessarily true? I mean, didn't we see him? I mean, because that's part of the problem with so many new media outlets. I mean, we see, okay, well, Ron Paul reportedly won Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, Maine. There's potential win for him in Texas, Nevada. So a lot of people are saying, well, wait a second, with all these wins, how can he not really be in it? He has over 500 delegates, according to some people's counts, which prevents Romney from taking the win, too. So Romney hasn't won.
That won't prevent Romney from taking the win, because Santorum will simply tell his delegates to support the presumptive nominee, Mitt Romney, and that'll be it. I expect Mitt Romney to win on the first vote. I think he will have the 1,144. If he doesn't, then we need to be there to make sure we do everything we possibly can. And that's why I said, is there a chance we could win the nomination still? Oh, yeah. There's a chance, slim as it might be, and it's worth fighting for, too. And we should be there, and we should do everything we can in our power to try and get it. But let's just not, let's be realists, and let's not be disappointed if it doesn't happen. But, man, yeah, we should put up a heck of a fight to try and make sure it does. That is absolutely for certain. There's no way we should be withdrawing at this point. We should be marching forward just with the understanding, okay, this is unlikely, so let's not be terribly disappointed if it doesn't happen, but let's give it everything we've got to try and get it. But you're right, there's not just the presidency at stake here, the nomination at stake. Obviously, if Romney wins the nomination, it's going to be a great battle between him and Obama. If Ron Paul won, well, it would basically just be handing the presidency to Ron Paul. I think he would win very, very easily. The GOP then makes you want to ask the question, well, does the GOP want to win or not? And I think it all comes down to the fact that, we're really dealing with one party who fly two different banners, and as long as one of them's in power, they don't really care a whole lot.
Well, I think what they do is kind of use the election as a litmus test and see where the temperature of the people are. And if the people are still with the incumbent, well, then they'll make it go the incumbent's way. And then they run somebody who, like you suggested, it's really the same party. They'll run somebody else to see if the political opinion sways the other way, so the people get the satisfaction of, hey, we just chose a candidate. And you really have to ask, if the GOP wanted to win, why didn't they go with the person that actually brought new people to the party, the person that brought votes over from the Democrats? Ron Paul actually pulls votes away from Barack Obama, whereas Mitt Romney only solidifies that Democratic base, because they view Mitt Romney as such a neocon almost. So, yeah, that's really the $6 million question. What was the RNC strategy here?
Well, I don't have a direct connection to Ron Paul or Rand Paul. I don't know. I really don't. I don't want to, try to be smart and claim that, this is what we're going to do and it's all going to work out like this. It's hard to say. I mean, the people that have got upset at Ron Paul the last few days for being so silent, I want to knock their heads together. Ron Paul has fought harder than any of us for the cause of liberty. And seriously, how dare anybody then think that he suddenly sells out at the last minute? I mean, that's preposterous. He did not want to run this time around. It took a lot of coaxing to get him to run. He was not interested. He's an older man. And right now he's resting in Clute, Texas, and he is absolutely exhausted. I mean, I know that much. He is absolutely exhausted right now. And we ran him into the ground, and we need to be thanking him and giving him absolute full appreciation for all that he has done over the last 18 months, because for a 76-year-old man as fit and healthy as he is, I mean, he really ran himself into the ground for us, for the cause of liberty. But now it's time for us to see that we had a champion who ran ahead with the banner and lifted it high so that everybody could see it. But now it's up to us to take the baton from him and continue to run. And if we don't, this movement will fail. You know, we're always talking about this as a leaderless movement. Well, then what the heck are we so worried about if the leader takes a break? We're a leaderless movement. Let's realize that and move forward. It's time for you and I and all of your listeners to realize that this movement now rests in our hands. Ron Paul has not given up. In fact, I think part of the strategy of him taking this rest is to tell us, hey, it's up to you now. I've done as much as I can. Now it's your turn. And that's, I think if he continued in the limelight, we may never have, picked up the pace and started to take this movement forward ourselves. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it can bear no fruit. And so I think Ron Paul, realizing that, okay, we're not going to do this, and withdrawing at this point, at least in public and media and so forth, gives us the time to realize, oh, this is our time now. Now it's time for us to carry this burden all the way through. And let's do it. We can do it. Of course we can do it. We don't have
absolutely,
to
and you almost felt that vacuum. As soon as this all started happening about a week ago, there was almost a vacuum within the movement where people started saying, oh, it's over, and some people felt distraught, and other people said, okay, no, now it's time for real leadership to push through. And to have a leaderless movement really isn't true either. I mean, you do need leadership because everybody needs to take a turn flying in the head of the formation when people get weak and weary. I mean, there needs to be some form of leadership, but we need to realize that leadership doesn't always come from just one person. And for too long, we've been counting on one person to save all of us, and that's just not a human's role.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely right.
So what happens January 2013 to RonPaulFlix.com? Is it going to continue? Is it going to rename and rebrand? What's the future for a website that everybody's fallen in love with?
When you look at sites that deal with Ludwig van Mises and Murray Rothbard, and you see their names continue, and I hope Ron Paul is with us for another 20 years and maybe even then some.
Well, I hope you're with us right after this break, Israel. Don't go anywhere. RonPaulFlix.com, Israel Anderson. Israel, when we went into the break, I kind of cut you off. You were talking about the future of Ron Paul Flix past January of 2013. What does the future hold for the site?
Well, I was just mentioning that there are other people that have created a following, and their sites kind of have remained, Ludwig van Mises, not that he had a website, of course, a little before his time, but that people have kept that name going and used it like that to continue to get the message of his philosophy out there. And I'm going to keep doing that with Ron Paul Flix. So even long after Ron Paul has left us and gone to a much better place, we will continue to do Ron Paul Flix. I believe once he's had a break, once the election's over, he's going to be doing a lot of speaking and teaching, lectures and so forth around the country, and we want to make sure that we have every single one of those on Ron Paul Flix so that we will always be, the premier place to go and learn about Ron Paul. So Ron Paul Flix is most certainly staying around.
Well, that is awesome. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about you yourself. It's always good to know the man behind the business, the man behind the site. So tell everybody a little bit about Israel. What's important to you? What are you doing in your life other than Ron Paul Flix?
Well, most people are probably interested in my accent, as I find always. And you know already, of course, but your listeners won't. So the accent comes from New Zealand. I was born in New Zealand. I grew up a lot in Australia as well, so it's a bit of a hodgepodge of Australia and New Zealand accent there, which is why everyone's going, is he Australian or is he a New Zealander? Yeah. So I came over here. I immigrated here 6 years ago to work with Winky Pratney. If some of your people have been involved in Christian ministry, then you're no doubt aware of Winky Pratney, who's one of the world's preeminent Christian theologians and youth speakers, even though he's called the world's oldest teenager. He's 68 years old this year, and predominantly talks to teens who love him to pieces. He's an incredible guy. So I came over to work for Winky. Winky then got very ill. Nearly died in South Korea, and so that changed what I was doing. I moved here to Boulder, Colorado. I got involved with Ron Paul. I ended up running the local Boulder Ron Paul group, which I've been doing the last 5 years. And I have a small data recovery business here, which is doing very well. No thanks to Obama. And so now I am closing down my business in 1 year's time from now. And we will be starting a thing called the Peace Bridge Project, nothing to do with the Canadian bridge, that is about going into foreign lands, particularly nations that we here in the U.S., the government particularly, has hostilities towards or just doesn't like, which is a lot of, and going into those nations and basically doing like a reality TV show with some of these families to let the West know what it's really like. I mean, you see these people, they're just waking up and having breakfast and going off to work, going off to school and getting married and having birthday parties and things like this. They're just normal, everyday, real people. They don't even think about the United States of America. They certainly aren't strapping bombs to their chest, and they just want to live their lives until they hear the sound of a bomb dropping on their head, which is coming from us. So I want to try to go to my Christian friends. I've been in Christian ministry for 20-odd years, and I want to be able to go to my friends in ministry and say, look, we don't agree with Islam. That's a given, okay? I'm never going to try and tell anybody that we should suddenly agree with Islam. Never. But we can at least have the common decency towards the people to not kill them before we get over there and reach them with the gospel, yeah? I mean, isn't that kind of fair? I mean, if we believe in the Great Commission as found in the end of Matthew, if we truly want to reach the world for Jesus, then we need to be going and reaching these people, not dropping bombs on their heads. Every single person we kill, we are sending to an eternity without Christ. That's not what I want to be doing. I want the opportunities to go there and reach these people with the gospel. And if we're dropping bombs on their head, we can't do that. We're doing a complete antithesis of the gospel. There's no good news about a bomb dropping on your head. So
well, isn't it kind of hypocritical also to say that through our military might we're trying to advance the American lifestyle and then not expect the American lifestyle, which would be advancing a military might, to then return upon us? Because that's what we're giving, and you get what you give. So if we're really advancing the way of America, and the way of America seems to be to bomb the bejeebies out of somebody, then why do we expect anything different in return?
The scripture teaches us that those who live by the sword will die by the sword. And if that's the way we're going to confront these people, is with violence, then most assuredly, as the Lord has told us, violence will come our way as well. That's not what we want. This is not the way to win the world to Jesus at all. That's one of my strong passions, to do that. We need to be doing it. Christians in this world, in this country right now, that are rejecting this liberty movement because of its libertarian philosophy need to rethink this. When these men brought the woman who was caught in adultery and threw her at the feet of the Lord and said, well, Moses said we should stone this woman to death for what she has done. Well, my first question is, well, where's the guy? I mean, he's as guilty as well. Where's he? He's never mentioned, but the Lord never excused this woman, not once. In fact, he told her directly that she was a sinner, because he said to her, go and sin no more. Not once did he excuse what she had done, but he did extend grace and mercy. He did extend that grace and mercy to allow her to repent and change away from what she was doing. You know, we need to be the same. That's what libertarianism is all about. Jesus still told her it was wrong, but he didn't condemn her for it. You know, we're all in a place where that is much better than we were 5 or 10 years ago. Everybody.
Well, and I think, and I think with the way media is shifting and the new players that are coming up in media, and you are definitely one of the new players in media, I think that when we look at efforts to create peace and to create those bridges, we actually see results, because it wasn't too long ago that a gentleman in Israel recorded just a little message that said, hey, people in Iran, I don't hate you. And it kind of went viral around the web, and then people in Iran responded back. And what really is happening, at least until they try to take control of the internet, is we have the ability to communicate with the people that normally in the past we didn't have the ability to communicate with. It just used to be government to government, and we never put a face to the other side. And once you put a face to the other side, it shifts the entire dynamic.
That's why James D. Rockefeller said it would have been better that we'd never created the internet. Yeah, because now for the first time in human history, we, the citizenry, we, the plebs, the sheep, the pawns, we have the ability to actually overrule governments. We have the ability to bypass governments. We can create documentaries that inform people of what life is really like for these other people and remove ignorance, remove fear, remove xenophobia, and create friendship with these people without the aid of some authoritative power over the top of us. And so the internet is going to be one of the most powerful tools in ending wars. And what if we could convince a nation to simply not fight back, or to not pick up, their swords in the first place? What if we could convince U.S. soldiers, whom we all respect and honor for what they do for their service, but what if we could encourage them, you know what, Iran has never attacked us, don't attack them. What if 30% of all our U.S. soldiers refuse to fight against Iran? Could you imagine the repercussions of a move like that? We can do this. The people have power now, and we can encourage these individuals. They're just like you and I. They put on a uniform. That's fantastic. They're brave. They're heroes for sure. But we can now speak to them directly through the internet and say, hey, this is not a fight worth fighting. It's really not. If Iran attacks us, we'll annihilate them. I'm not a pacifist. If Iran ever sent a nuke our way, we would wipe them off the face of the planet. But until they do that, can we be friends? Is there something wrong with being friends with people, really? People say, oh, Ahmadinejad wants to wipe. Who cares about Ahmadinejad? Go to the people. Forget Ahmadinejad. It's not worth our time to worry about this guy. We need to go directly to the people of Iran and say, listen, can we be friends? And
in reality, if we go to the people of Iran, then they will deal with Ahmadinejad.
Yes, exactly. Precisely.
Well, Israel,
we are here.
Israel, it was a pleasure having you on. I mean, 45 minutes goes by so fast when the conversation's enjoyable. We'll have to have you back on, because a question I wanted to get you to answer, and this is a teaser for those out there in radio land, I want to know which would be better for the liberty cause, a Mitt Romney presidency or Barack Obama presidency. So until next time, and for all of our listeners, may your path lead to heaven, and may freedom follow in your footsteps.